What happens when love dares to bloom in a nation of over 1 billion people, where tradition runs deep and change often meets resistance? Welcome to a journey through the lives of brave individuals from the world's second-largest economy, who chose authenticity over silence. In a country where every step toward living openly still takes incredible courage, these LGBTQ+ icons are rewriting history, one bold move at a time. Get ready to meet the faces of hope, resilience, and pride that are shaping. There was a time when silence was a necessity for survival. An Edison fan knew that silence intimately. Growing up, straddling the cultural expectations of China and the open landscapes of New Zealand, Edison carried within him a quiet storm. A yearning to live fully, yet an understanding that doing so would demand immense courage. From the very beginning, Edison was never content with simply blending in. With a magnetic presence and a striking sense of self, he rose through the modeling world not merely as a figure of beauty but as a force of quiet rebellion. Every photograph, every appearance, was a subtle act of defiance against a world that demanded conformity. His rise to fame on social media, gathering millions of followers across platforms like Weibo and Instagram, was not just about visibility. It was about planting seeds of change in hearts that had never dared to hope. The true revolution began when Edison stepped beyond the shadows and chose to live openly. His public coming out was not a press release nor a carefully managed headline. It was his life, raw and unapologetic. Marrying the man he loved in a joyful ceremony, Edison defied the unspoken rules of discretion that so many were still forced to follow. Their union was a radiant declaration that love, in all its forms, is worthy of celebration. And when life led him to the path of single parenthood, Edison embraced it with the same fearless spirit. Breaking yet another mold, he gave countless others the courage to imagine new definitions of family. His journey was no longer just personal. It became a mirror reflecting the hopes, fears, and dreams of an entire community that had for too long been told to stay invisible. Through every candid post, every heartfelt story, he whispered to them, "You are seen. You are enough, and your story matters." Yet Edison fans' impact reaches far beyond the inspiring snapshots of his personal life. Refusing to be confined to one success, he built entire platforms dedicated to empowerment and visibility. With ventures like OMG Sportswear and U-Touch underwear, Edison transformed fashion into activism, crafting brands that celebrated strength, pride, and authenticity. Every product he created carried a message that living openly is not just an act of survival, it is an act of triumph. He showed that authenticity is not a weakness to be hidden, but a power to be worn boldly, unapologetically. Today, Edison stands not just as a model or entrepreneur, but as a living testament to the transformative power of authenticity. His journey reminds us that when even one person dares to live without shame, they light a path for countless others to follow. And that sometimes, the most powerful revolution begins with a single, fearless heart choosing to love without limits. Some stars do not fade, they transcend. Leslie Cheung was one of those rare spirits who could not be contained by a single lifetime. From the moment he stepped onto the stage in Hong Kong's bustling entertainment scene, Leslie carried something more than talent. He carried a quiet defiance, a raw vulnerability, and a kind of beauty that did not beg for approval. It simply existed, undeniable and whole. His voice had the power to mend broken hearts and tear down walls, while his presence blurred the lines between masculine and feminine, art and life, fame and fragility. At a time when the world demanded masks, Leslie gave them his soul instead. Every note he sang, every character he embodied was a small act of revolution. A declaration that truth, even when wrapped in pain, was still worth singing. The most breathtaking act of courage came not in his performances, but in his life itself. In 1997, after delivering a haunting portrayal in Happy Together, Leslie did something almost unthinkable for a celebrity in Asia. He publicly acknowledged his love for Daffy Tong. It was not an orchestrated statement or a media stunt. It was a simple, profound truth, lived openly. In a society that had long whispered in fear about love between men, Leslie's honesty broke a silence that had felt eternal. He did not preach, nor did he demand acceptance. He simply lived his truth with quiet dignity. In doing so, he became a lighthouse for countless others lost in the dark. A living reminder that love does not need permission to exist. Even as the weight of expectation and judgment bore down, Leslie stood firm, his authenticity an act of quiet rebellion that echoed across generations. When Leslie Chung left this world in 2003, it felt as though a great light had been extinguished, but the truth is, his light never left. It lives on in every song that dares to tell an untold story, in every young person who finds the courage to love openly, in every artist who chooses honesty over fear. Leslie's legacy is stitched into the fabric of Asia's cultural awakening, a tapestry woven with bravery, heartbreak, and hope. He was not just a star, he was a catalyst, a beautiful storm that showed us that the most powerful art is born from authenticity. Even now, decades later, his voice still calls out across time, reminding us that true love, true beauty, and true courage are never forgotten. They simply find new hearts to inhabit, and Leslie's spirit, luminous and unbreakable, continues to shine in them all. Not every battle leaves visible scars. Sometimes the deepest wounds are the ones we hide beneath the brightest smiles. For years, Terence Siufei lived a life that sparkled on the surface but ached in silence underneath. Rising from humble beginnings in Macau, he spent a decade captivating local audiences with his group C+, before stepping onto the grander stage of Hong Kong's booming music scene. He sang, he acted, he smiled for the cameras, and yet, within him, a quieter, lonelier story played out. In a culture that prized appearances and conformity, Terence learned to survive by building walls high enough to protect his truth, but not high enough to protect his heart. Every round of applause, every award, every bright spotlight felt a little heavier, a little more hollow, when you had to leave parts of yourself behind. The breaking point came not with a scandal or a slip, but with a decision, a quiet, brave choice to stop hiding. In 2020, after years of bearing the weight of whispered rumors, Terence came out publicly as gay during a candid interview that stunned and moved fans across Asia. He spoke, not with anger or defiance, but with a deep, aching honesty about what it meant to live in fear of being yourself. He spoke of sleepless nights, of opportunities lost to silence, of the quiet grief of living only half a life. But more than anything, he spoke of liberation, the freedom that came when he chose authenticity over survival. For Terence, coming out was not about making headlines. It was about reclaiming his own voice and offering hope to anyone else still locked in their own invisible prisons. Today, Terence Siufei's story resonates far beyond the charts and the silver screen. No longer bound by fear, he uses his platform to lift others higher, participating in LGBTQ+ initiatives, supporting awareness campaigns, and weaving messages of love and acceptance into his work. Through his music, through his presence, he reminds us that true strength often speaks in whispers, not roars. He reminds us that courage can look like a quiet confession, a tearful truth, a simple act of standing still when the world expects you to run. Terence's journey is proof that authenticity is not just a personal victory, it is a gift to the world. A light passed from one trembling hand to another. And somewhere, in the crowd beyond the stage, someone hears that light and finds the strength to step into their own. Some artists do not just create songs, they build sanctuaries. Chet Lam grew up in the neon heartbeat of Hong Kong, where dreams and expectations collided on crowded streets, and whispered promises were often left unspoken. From a young age, he felt the rhythm of life beating differently inside him, a melody that refused to conform. When Chet picked up his first guitar, it was not to impress, but to survive, to carve a space for feelings that had no other home. His music, an eclectic blend of Cantonese, Mandarin, and English, flowed like a secret language, one that spoke of yearning, of identity, and of a love too often hidden in the shadows. While the world raced ahead chasing fame, Chet quietly built a world where vulnerability was not weakness, but the very fabric of strength. In 2005, long before it was safe or celebrated, Chet Lam made a decision that would redefine his life and career. He came out publicly as gay, choosing to live openly at a time when many artists still feared the consequences. It was not a headline-grabbing confession or a calculated move. It was an act of survival, a necessary breath after years of holding it all in. He did more than just tell his truth. He sang it, wrote it, lived it, for anyone who had ever felt invisible. From intimate performances at Hong Kong's Pride events to songs that painted the invisible battles of the heart, Chet's work became a beacon for a generation desperate for representation. His authenticity was not loud or defiant. It was steady, unwavering. A quiet revolution wrapped in chords and lyrics that refused to apologize for their existence. Today, Chet Lam stands as more than just a celebrated independent musician. He is a pioneer who turned his voice into a shelter for countless others. Through nearly 2 decades of albums and best-selling books, he has crafted more than art. He has created spaces where LGBTQ+ identities are not just accepted, they are celebrated. Chet's legacy is not measured solely in awards or album sales, but in the thousands of hearts he has touched, each one finding, through his music, the courage to sing their own truths. He reminds us that sometimes the most profound revolutions do not roar. They hum softly under our skin, carried by melodies that refuse to die. And somewhere tonight, under the city lights of Hong Kong, a quiet song rises into the sky, reminding all who hear it that love in every form deserves to be heard. Liu Kong and Chen Lu. Sometimes, change does not come from grand speeches or carefully orchestrated movements. It arrives in a moment so unexpected, so raw, that it shakes the ground beneath our feet. For Liu Kong and Chen Lu, that moment happened in front of a live stream audience, where the world was not prepared for what came next. One minute, they were familiar faces in the entertainment world. Liu, a promising singer from Tencent's Produce 101, and Chen, a vibrant social media influencer. The next, they were wrapped in an intimacy so real, so unapologetic, that it left the internet breathless. In a society where LGBTQ+ figures had long been expected to hide, their public affection was not just surprising, it was revolutionary. It was the kind of moment that made people pause and imagine a different kind of future. The aftermath was a whirlwind of emotions. Some celebrated them as the first openly gay celebrity couple to emerge from mainland China's entertainment industry, a milestone many never thought they would witness in their lifetime. Others, skeptical and cautious, questioned the authenticity of their relationship, wondering whether it was love or simply spectacle. But whether staged or sincere, the impact of that single act was undeniable. Liu Kong and Chen Lu cracked open conversations that had been locked away for generations, giving voice to feelings too long silenced by fear and tradition. Suddenly, LGBTQ+ identities were not just topics whispered about in dark corners. They were visible, tangible, and impossible to ignore. And for the young hearts watching, hearts that had learned to live quietly and cautiously, the message was clear. Someone was finally brave enough to risk being seen. Today, their story remains complicated, layered with debate and uncertainty. But within that complexity lies its greatest power. Visibility, after all, is rarely perfect. It is messy, emotional, and often met with resistance. Yet even amidst the doubts, Liu Kong and Chen Lu's willingness to step into the light, even for a moment, opened a door that cannot be easily closed again. Through music, through live streams, through their simple act of affection, they challenged a culture to rethink what was possible. They reminded an entire generation that love in all its forms deserves not just tolerance, but celebration. And somewhere tonight, in countless quiet rooms across China, Someone who once thought they had to hide feels a little less alone. Because sometimes it only takes a spark, one unexpected, imperfect, beautiful spark to set a whole world on fire with hope. And maybe their story is only just beginning. Thank you for joining us on this journey through stories of courage, truth, and resilience. The voices we heard today remind us that even the quietest acts of authenticity can change the world. If these stories moved you, inspired you, or made you think, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters too.